The photo came back clear enough. That's the part I keep coming back to. I've looked at it a lot over the years, and I still haven't figured out a good explanation for what's in it. I don't know if I'm going to get one at this point. The call came in around 4 in the morning. Two hikers hadn't come back. 21-year-old Kara Whitfield and her 24-year-old boyfriend Daniel Pruitt. They'd gone off trail somewhere near the Ridgeback Creek. Another hiker had seen them the afternoon before. Said Kara stepped off the trail upset about something and Daniel went after her. That was it. By the time I got the call, they'd been out there for 18 hours. I was already up. It was my daughter Maya's birthday. I promised her breakfast and I was getting ready to go to the store when the phone rang. She was sitting on the stairs when I came out of the kitchen. I told her people needed help and she didn't argue. Just nodded and went back to her room. Then she came out with her disposable camera, the pink one she'd gotten for Christmas, and asked me to take a picture of an animal for her. I said I would, put it in my jacket pocket, and didn't think about it again for a long time. There were 9 of us in total. We did the standard equipment checks at the parking lot and split into teams. I took a group of 3 down the lower bank past the tree line into the stretch below the main trail. The Ridgeback sector drops off fast once you leave the bark path. There's tons of loose rock, steep grades, and dense brush. It's not a good area to be in after dark, and these 2 had already been there for a full night. With that kind of exposure, you start running the numbers automatically. Hydration, the temperature overnight, whether they had any gear on them. The other hiker who'd seen them said they were lightly dressed. That wasn't good. We moved carefully and stayed close. The terrain in that area has a way of looking manageable until it isn't. There was an animal sign which wasn't unusual. Claw marks in the bark of a spruce, bent undergrowth, and a tuft of dark fur caught on a low branch about chest height. I noted it and kept moving. What did stick with me, and I'm not sure why exactly, was the quiet. No birds at all on that stretch. I've worked that sector for a long time and there's usually something. Jays, at the minimum. That morning there was nothing. I mentioned it to Chris, one of the other rangers. He looked around for a second and shrugged. We kept moving. About 20 minutes in, I noticed the creek. We were paralleling it on the left, and at some point I registered that I couldn't hear it anymore. We hadn't moved away from it. I could still see it through the trees, maybe 45 feet out. Still moving. I just couldn't hear it. I slowed down and tried to figure out if the wind had shifted or something. There was nothing I could point to. Then I looked down and realized my boots were wet. Not damp, wet, like I'd been walking through standing water. But I hadn't. I retraced the last 20 feet in my head and there was nowhere that should have happened. I looked at Chris. He didn't seem to notice anything, so we kept moving. Suddenly a branch snapped somewhere behind us. I turned around and there was nothing there. Again, Chris hadn't heard it, so we kept moving. About 40 minutes in, I spotted something caught on a rock shelf below the ridgeline. I thought it was a piece of fabric. I called Chris over and moved closer to get a better look. Reached out for a cedar branch to steady myself. That's where I went down. The slope dropped faster than I'd read it. I lost my footing and fell hard. Tried to roll with it the way you're supposed to. Got maybe 1 rotation before I hit a root system and lost control. I tumbled the rest of the way down to the bottom of a narrow gully. By the time I stopped moving, I was face down in the brush. Wind knocked out of me. I stayed down for a moment. I ran through the basics. I had nothing broken, clearly hit my head on something. I'd feel that later. I was all scraped up. But more than anything, I felt embarrassed. I could hear Chris calling from up the slope. I started pushing myself up and I heard a branch snap behind me. I turned, expecting Chris. It wasn't Chris. I don't know how to explain what I saw without sounding like I'm overstating it. I'm really aware of how this all sounds, but I'm telling you, something was there. It was standing at the edge of the brush, maybe 15 or 20 feet out, standing upright. That was the first thing I registered. It was fully upright, not in a crouch, not mid-movement, just standing there. It was large. The fur was dark, close to black, and dark enough that reading it against the tree line was difficult. There was this smell. I didn't place it right away. Something organic, heavy, like something left out too long. I looked at its face. What I could see clearly, because it was right there, right in front of me, was what it was holding at its side. A human arm, separated at the shoulder. There was dark fabric shredded into the skin near the wrist, embedded into it basically. and just below that was a tattoo, a dragon in black ink running up the forearm. I didn't move. I had my hand on my sidearm, but I didn't draw it. I don't fully know why. I just stayed where I was and I watched it. Everything was very still. The whole gully was just quiet. No wind, no sound from the creek, nothing. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It felt like a very long time, but I know it probably wasn't. It took one step toward me, slow and deliberate. The arm shifted when it moved. Then Chris's voice came through the trees, calling my name, calling Kara and Daniel. The thing's ears moved. It held its position for a moment. I had this sense, I can't explain it better than that it was weighing something. And then it turned and moved into the tree line, quickly and without much sound, which for something that size didn't make sense to me. I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd stopped breathing. Then I remembered the camera. I don't know why I reached for it instead of the gun, but it was already in my hand before I consciously made the decision. I got one shot off before it was gone. By the time I wound the dial for a second frame, there was nothing in the tree line. I stood there for a second. Then I heard movement at the edge of the brush. Lower down, slow and uneven. A figure came out of the trees. It took me a moment to process what I was looking at. He was standing, but not well. His left arm was gone at the shoulder. Just gone. The wound dark and dried. His right leg dragged when he moved. The skin on his face and neck was damaged in a way I'm not going to try to describe. He came out of the tree line and stood in the clearing and looked in my direction, but not at me exactly. Past me, or through me, I'm not sure which. He raised his hand and touched the place where his arm had been. Slowly, almost absently, like he was checking something he already knew wasn't there. I said his name loudly. Daniel! He didn't respond. He turned and walked back into the trees, dragging his foot along the dry ground. I could hear that for a while after he was gone. Something in the tree line made a sound. I don't have a word for it. Not a howl, but nothing I could compare it to. I had my gun out and aimed it at the brush. I held that position until Chris came down the slope and reached me. One thing I've thought about since, and I don't know what to make of it, is when Chris came down, he said he'd been calling my name for almost 10 minutes. I don't know where the time went. It didn't feel like 10 minutes. I told them everything, all of it. Chris and the others listened. They searched the area for over an hour and came up with nothing. No blood trail, no trace of Daniel. The team lead said I'd probably hit my head on the way down. He wasn't wrong. I dropped the camera off the next morning and picked it up the day after. The man behind the counter handed me the envelope without making eye contact. Just slid it across the glass and looked past my shoulder at something behind me. I turned around. Nobody was there. I thought that was odd, but I didn't say anything. The shot was overexposed on the right, grainy in the lower left. The center was clear enough. There's a shape at the edge of the tree line. Dark, upright, too large for what it should be. Kara and Daniel were never found, both listed as missing, presumed lost to exposure. I kept the photo in a fireproof box in my brother's garage for 4 years. In 2007, my house caught on fire. We got out. We lost most of everything. I don't talk about whether I think that was a coincidence. I told Maya I'd take a picture of an animal for her, but I'm still not sure that's what I took a picture of.